Let me transition to another subject involving the Olympics, please, and that would be the opening ceremony that took place this past Friday. Opening ceremony of the Paris Olympic Games. That's what I'm talking about here. To some people, it was spectacular. To others, not so much. The 4-hour telecast featured Olympic athletes making their entrances on boats that floated along the River Seine. In between the entrances, one group of performers sparked controversies amongst Christians worldwide. A group of drag queens and dancers were pictured sitting at a long table in an image that some believed resembled Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, the portrait of Jesus Christ and his 12 apostles. Some called the imagery insulting and a mockery to the Christian faith. This is the official page of the Olympic Games saying the interpretation of the Greek god Dionysus makes us aware of the absurdity of violence between human beings. That's the official Olympic Games page, okay? That's what they said. But needless to say, House Speaker Mike Johnson had his own interpretation, and he posted this on X Saturday. Quote, "Last night's mockery of the Last Supper was shocking and insulting to Christian people around the world who watched the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. The war on our faith and traditional values knows no bounds today, but we know that truth and virtue will always prevail," end quote. The post ends with the scripture from John chapter 1, verse 5. "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it," end quote. Look, there's a lot of backlash, as you can imagine. It was swift from the artist who created the scene and from an Olympic spokesperson and the camps. Here's the statement she issued following the controversy. Quote, "Clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, we really did try to celebrate community tolerance. Looking at the result of the polls that we shared, we believe that this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry." You should be sorry. You should be sorry. And let me tell you why you should be sorry. Because you should have made that intent clear before it happened. You should have made sure it wasn't depicting the Last Supper. You should have made sure nobody had the ammunition to say that it was. You should have made sure that in the process of all of that going on, that you highlighted exactly what it was supposed to be. Because, see, I got my own research here, okay? And I'm just reading. I got a one sheet right here in front of me. And I'm just reading from some of this stuff here. Obviously, it provoked outrage by religious conservatives around the world. According to them, and they're talking about all of this stuff. I want to remind y'all, drag artists, dancers, and others flanked Butch on both sides. Who is Butch? They're talking about DJ and producer Barbara Butch, an LGBTQ plus icon who calls herself, quote unquote, the love activist. Butch was wearing a silver headdress that looked like a halo as she got the party going on a footbridge across the Seine. Drag artists, dancers, and others flanked her on both sides. This is according to a CBS News correspondent by the name of Elaine Cobb reporting the specific part of the ceremony that caused the offense. She says was in fact a scene depicting Dionysus, the Greek god of wine. It was reportedly based on The Feast of the Gods, a 17th century painting by Dutch artist Jan Hermans van Bilgert that hangs in the Magnan Museum in Dijon, Eastern France. The painting depicts an assembly of Greek gods on Mount Olympus for a banquet to celebrate the marriage of Thetis and Peleus. The figure seated at the table in the center has a halo of light behind his head. Thomas Jolly, the opening ceremony director, insisted in an interview with France's BFM TV that, quote, the Last Supper was not the inspiration behind the scene, explaining that Dionysus arrives at the table because he is the Greek god of celebration, adding that the particular sequence was entitled Festivity. That's what it said. It also goes on to say Dionysus arrives at the table because he is the Greek god of celebration. The idea was to create a big pagan party in link with the god of Mount Olympus, and you will never find in me or in my work any desire of mocking anyone. My wish isn't to be subversive, nor to mock or to shock. Most of all, I wanted to send a message of love, a message of inclusion, and not at all to divide. So as the late, great Joe Madison from Urban View Radio on Sirius XM channel 126, who passed away a few months ago after a lengthy battle with cancer. God rest his wonderful soul. He's in heaven watching all of us right now. What a good man he was. To steal his phrase, to put it where the goats can get it. What you were really aiming for was for the LGBTQ plus community to be embraced. Fair enough. Got no problems with that. But you do understand, while that appeals to an abundance of people the world over, it also serves to alienate a bunch of folks the world over. And in America, there's an election that's about to take place. Why you think the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, opened his mouth? So, once again, we can sit up there and see that, and we talked about how the games are supposed to be about the games. And since there's athletes from all over the globe descending upon one venue to compete against one another, one would think that's inclusionary enough. The message of inclusion was sent. But we got to take it to another level, right? Right? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying there's tens of millions of people who will. And why would you want to take that risk when elections are coming up? See, a lot of times in life, we want our cake and we want to eat it too. And what I mean by that is that we want it all at once. My attitude would have been looking at the political landscape, the potential fallout from such a scene and an event, and I would have deduced in my mind how advantageous this is or how problematic it could be. That's just me. Because I want the results that I want. Not just to speak, not just to vent, not just to express myself. I want the results I want. And that's what I think got lost in all of this. Every single word they said, I don't think can be disputed in terms of their intent. So why didn't you tell us beforehand? Surely you must have had an idea that people would have reacted to this. You had conservatives talking about how they had their children watching the opening ceremonies and didn't know that's what they were going to see. And I saw some of the dancing. I'm an adult. I saw some of the dancing that was going out there. I saw somebody, just because you paint somebody in blue don't mean they ain't naked. That person that was in blue was naked. Am I lying? Am I lying?
Nope.
They were naked. There was no warning here. It's not required for the adults. I get that part. But opening ceremony of the Olympics, you know a bunch of people were watching that with their children. And some people don't want their children seeing that. Whether you like it or not, folks have a right to want their children to see and not see what they choose. I don't have a problem. Remember, I'm a conservative with my dollars. I'm a liberal every other way. I'm liberal. I get it. I'm cool. But I know tens of millions of conservatives won't be. And there's an election coming up. And as I was explaining to my man Michael earlier during a commercial break, when people go to the polls, because I'm here in the United States of America, I don't know what elections are going on elsewhere or when they're scheduled for, but I know in the United States of America it's scheduled for November 5th. And what I'm saying is, I know that when people go to the polls, there's usually one overlapping dominant issue that influence who they vote for. So what if all of a sudden Roe v. Wade, immigration, and the economy suddenly didn't become the priority that religion is? What if folks decided to go to the polls because I either love what I saw or I can't stand what I saw? You ever think about that? I don't think they did. But the conservatives did everywhere. And who knows how they'll react to it. But in closing, one of my boys, who's a staunch Republican, who I made go to the polls and vote for Obama back in 2008, by the way, he always says something to me that I can't escape. He said, liberals, progressives, Democrats. He said, y'all argue, y'all fuss, y'all fight, y'all protest. He said, Republicans, we just go to the polls. We ain't got nothing to say. We roll right up to the polls. That's what he said. And then I remember Cat Williams doing his stand-up. I think this time it was from Jacksonville. And he talked about after Trump won the election in 2016. And he said, you had folks at the polls like they knew something nobody else knew. And they just take one step at a time, like just stepping closer and closer to the polls with a pep in their step because they knew what they were going to do. When it comes to politics, every little thing matters as an election approaches, especially religion. And whether it was their intent or not, a religious outrage was sparked. Only time will tell what kind of effect this truly has on an election. But it's a thought worth thinking about.